stage.
Yeah,
So
good enough.
just make sure you put your camera off.
Yep. Thanks, man.
All right.
Fumi, we're alive.
Oh, good evening, everyone. My name is Fumi Lola Adeyemi. I'm the academic lead for the Radiology Interest Group Africa. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I understand I know it's Saturday and we have weekend plans, but thank you so much for taking out the time to join us this evening. So tonight's event is the first in our research series. It's the goal is generally to just get us started in research. I mean, depending on what level you are, I know some of us may have already published in the past. Some of us may be currently working on some papers, or you're just still wondering how to get started. So the goal is to give us, including myself, the necessary push, motivation, and some direction as well. Because I believe that if you do not have the right map, as well, you could really get lost in the sea. We have a number of speakers for the events in this research series, but for tonight, our research speaker is a medical doctor. He has won a number of awards as well. And I'll just be shortly introducing him. He's received a number of awards, which include the Royal African Leadership Award, the Commonwealth COVID-19 Hero. He's a One Young Bird Scholar. He's a Mandela Washington Fellow as well. He has a master's degree in reproductive health sciences from the Pan-African University. He's a medical doctor from the University of Ibadan, which is my alma mater as well. And he's currently studying for a PhD in public health sciences at the University of North Carolina. His name is Dr. Isaac Olufadewa. Thank you so much, Dr. Isaac. You'll be speaking for some time, for some minutes, and you can just put your questions in the chat box, please, as it speaks, or if you'd like to ask at the end, we could do that as well. But I think it would be best for us to type our questions in the chat box so that when it's time for the Q&A, it'd be easy to take all the questions. Over to you, Dr. Isaac.
So thank you so much, Dr. Adeyemi, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today. I really love to talk about research, and it's really nice to be in this forum today. And like she has said, please, if you have any questions, if you have anything, whether it's an ongoing research project or whether it's like a research topic that you are thinking about, you can always like drop it in the chat box. And then I think it's going to be, I'm looking forward to like the questions. I'm looking forward to the discussion at the end of the presentation. And one thing I want us to know is that to start with, especially when it comes to research, I would really want to start with the premise. I know that I'm talking about introduction to research. I would really want to start with the premise of research is fun, and it takes really someone who really likes these things to really get to know about research. So I would just I hope that I'll be able to inspire the fun, or will I use the word, the creativity, the intellectual fun that's like, and the joy that research brings, and be able to translate some of that, or will I use the word transmit in an infectious disease perspective, some of that to many of us today. So I would start with so here is, I'm the Executive Director of Slow Man Health Initiative. Currently I have over 45 peer-reviewed publications. I had the opportunity of working as an international expert with the Lancet COVID-19 Commission, and I co-founded the Shrin Research Academy that trains professionals and people on research. I want to really also start with the saying that I feel like somehow I stumbled into research. I don't feel that when I was in medical school, I always had this notion that when I grow up, or when I finish my medical degree, I would venture into research or public health full time. Yes, I know that I had some of the skills or some of the gifts, but it's never just really occurred to me, maybe because of the exposure that we have had with research, and I'm quite sure that that's the case for so many other people, especially if you're trained in in like a low or middle income country like Nigeria, where there's a lot of emphasis on the theoretical aspect of many of those things. But there's going to be one thing that I really want us to know, in terms of like, research, which really looks at like, I really want us to really get the concept, or will I use the word, have a background knowledge in research. So I had the opportunity of going for my master's study in Pan African University and the University of Ibadan, and then it was during those periods that I had like the first really grounded experience with research. And one thing that really made it fun for me was because I was also the like only Nigerian guy with with other students from other countries, and then we discussed like many of the problems or one of the challenges, the innovations and the other things that we had, in respective countries that really brought out the life in research for me, but for some of you, it is like probably the thing about the joy of like new technologies, like using Python, using deep learning models, or using all these new tools, in doing research. And I think with the advent of artificial intelligence and a lot of like new technologies, research is so much more fun than it's ever had been, or it will ever be. So I know that like there's so many different definitions of research, I would just like really categorize this into what I call the 5S of research, and just from that word research, research basically is you start by searching, right? So I think the word in front of the search just really indicates that you have to like search over and over again. And once you know this, you know peace, right? So in sense of, someone told you sometime that, oh, somebody was breaking the world record in cookathon in maybe Lekki, Lagos, and then you went on LinkedIn, and then you went on like probably TikTok and you didn't find the person, then you went on LinkedIn and then you didn't find the person, then probably you went on Instagram. Yes, you saw the person, Hilda, then you were wondering, is it Hilda in my church or the Hilda that stuff, and then you started like searching for instance, let us say you have maybe Linda Ikeji's blog. Oh, Linda Ikeji's blog should actually pick that up, right? So that process is basically, you are basically doing research. So research is not just for, in terms of like, so when people say I don't like research, and I'm like, wow, you do research every single day of your life, so why don't you like it? So in the context of like everyday life, we are research beings, I think, just to drive on that point. And basically, it was based on your research that you just discovered that, I don't know whether you had this experience as a child, and I'm just really dwelling here because I feel that once we understand that like research is just a part of everyday life, it changes everything. When we were kids, and then we went to like the light bulb, and then we were trying to balance it. I don't know who tried to balance it and who probably was successful, who wasn't successful, but I tried that, as a young, like what point does this thing flip over? That's like trying to like have a research. So definitely you have to have a subject, and whether it is radiology or it is clinical medicine or it is reproductive health, HIV research, you cannot do everything, and that's like why the subject is really important. Then you talk about systematic is everything. So it's not just about, oh, this is what is being done. There must be a systematic process to it, and when we talk about systematic process, how are you doing what you are doing? So for instance, you could look at, okay, when we take 5 sand, and then we take like 5 spoons of sand and then 2 spoons of salt, you get this formulation, and then like somebody else does it, you definitely should get the same results, and that is it. So anytime you are doing like maybe research and then you are not putting this, I think this is probably, and that's why like one of the core things or core elements of like what research is really about, then it has to be scientific. I'm not going to be like spending too much time, because we know that there are so much things on research methods and many other things, and then it also adds to knowledge, and that's like where I mean some of knowledge here, so it has to like add to like something. So you have to like, so when people talk about research, some people think it's novelty. Novelty does not really mean something new entirely, but it just really means that something that is you bring in different perspective. And sometimes I really wonder like how people just really look for, research topics to do, because if it has been done in America, you can do it in the UK. If nobody has done it in UK, the fact that it changed location, that's novelty. Sometimes it's just like, oh, in America, what they did was logistic regression. What I'm doing is multivariate, regression or something like that. That's novelty. Oh, what they used was WhatsApp. Now I'm using TikTok and Facebook. That is novelty. And basically, that is how we know, like, something, have add to knowledge. So now that I've established the foundation, which is like my major task today, I know that we'll be going through, like, why do we do research? This is a lot of things, degree, you need to progress in your career, promotion, solve challenges, but I feel that one of the soft spots for research is when you just derive that intellectual joy. When you get to that phase, then, research is no more work, it is fun, right? I know that there are many things to understand this about research, but I think another key thing is the expert factor. You want to be seen as an expert in your field. It doesn't matter whether you have treated 100,000 patients. One of the things that gives you that expert factor is the fact that, oh, you have this number of publications, and that just really sets you apart because it's seen as a benchmark or as a tool. If you like, spend 24 hours in the clinic, or you say you are in an academic institution, you sleep over the academic institution for like maybe 3 months, and then somebody does 3 weeks and produces 3 papers. The person that does 3 weeks and produces 3 papers will be respected more than the person that just does the work and is not producing results. So basically, publications and the ability to do research itself is what they call results, and everybody needs results. Yeah, so I've mentioned like a lot of this, so, and yeah, so in terms of like characteristics of the research, I think just to like let us know, I've mentioned some of these things in earlier. You have to be objective, right? So you don't just say you want to do a research and you say Ghana jollof is better than Nigeria jollof. I purposely switched it, right? Because I know there are a lot more Nigerians here, because that you are not being objective. You can also say the other side that, oh, Nigerian jollof is better than Ghana jollof, because at the outset of your research, we are seeing that, oh, this person is not objective, so you really want, so you don't want to say, you don't want to like have all your introduction and say, oh, this is the reason why Nigerian like, you have to like put in like, oh, we don't probably know whether this is what might make this, but you have to like have some level of, you don't want to appear as someone who just really wants to find out something because you want to just what they call confirmation bias. Yeah, I said it now, it's every Yoruba boy is a Yoruba demon, for instance, and I said that's what we found, from our research, right? So that's like one really key thing, and you need to ask yourself these questions, whether it's a new radiology technique or it's something, am I being objective in the way I'm approaching this question? Then replicable, balance, quality control, applicable. Balance is a very interesting thing that also goes with objectivity. Replicable is like, goes a lot with reproduce. Replicable, we talk about like if somebody else does that same thing with the same method you really used, will the person be able to get the same result? And I know that there's this thing, you really need to be able to get the same result in research. But when we say same, we don't mean like exactly the same, but something similar, and that's why we use things like confidence intervals, range and things like that, because we expect things to like, not be exactly the same, but can really just work around things like this. So quality control, I'm not quite sure, like we're already familiar with many of these things, but I think right now when we want to like engage in research, or we want to do ensure that we use research in our work, then we have to like really look at it from this perspective. If you do a research that you think that cannot be applicable to any policy, cannot be able to solve any problem, then you are really not in the business of like, doing research. So just this is like a very good graphics I got from this, and that really shows like, what are the steps, right, in terms of like doing research. So many times, I feel that there's this what they call maybe people that are stuck in research. Sometimes you want to do everything at the same time. When I mean you want to do everything at the same time, is that first you have to really see, like, do you have a topic? And that's why I like to like define research and include that you have to have a subject. You cannot just say you want to do research in radiology. That is not specific at all. And when you go to the literature, I'm telling you, you'll be depressed after 3 days. You go to the literature and then you're just searching PubMed, radiology research topics or radiology stuff, because you get so much so much suggestions than you can, and then you get into that frame where, because you have so much that is being put out to you, then you are fatigued. We like call it decision fatigue, and that's why it's a stepwise process. You cannot really say, because for instance, I want to we want to anyway, so like you want to do a work, for instance, I've done so many research works, and then like you have to, once you get the topic, I can almost tell you that your work is almost half done. Immediately you have the topic and you can like know what you really want to do based on like what you already have, then your work is almost like if problem shared is a problem half solved, because every other thing can really follow. I remember sometime, and then we wanted to do like a research, and then actually I think it was during COVID years, I wanted to do like research on like what's the mental health status of like young people. Number one, mental health was also a very, very broad topic, so we had to bring it down and then narrow it down to what's the level of depression, anxiety disorder among young people. Then it really, really made a lot of sense. Then we had to then, because we have selected the topic, then we went to review literature. Definitely COVID was just happening, the global pandemic, we have not really seen it before, like in the last 100 years, before the last major pandemic. And it was easy to review literature, and we didn't even find any as at the time we searched then and everything. And then, but one thing that really clarified what we were doing, though it was a web-based survey, was the fact, because we were able to identify a topic to do. Now we can say, oh, we want to do research on young people. That's like a lot of I get a lot of those kind of vibes, from like researchers, and like, oh, okay, what do you want to do or something. It doesn't mean that you cannot also go broadly sometimes. So for instance, we started with, we want to like identify the mental health of young people. Okay, which areas, which ones are the most applicable? So don't fall into that trap of we want to do everything and then you do nothing. So that's a very key thing. Then you need to review the literature. Okay, now I want to look at maybe the role of CT scans in diagnosis of, for instance, maybe brain cancers. And you go ahead, you look at the review of literature and say, okay, I've seen, they've been able to talk about this. Somebody has done a good systematic review on this. So you go to the ending or the last part of the person's work, and the person will most likely talk about future research and things like that. Then you start having an idea. Okay, future research, you look at CT scan and its use in African population, because 90% or 95% of the studies that have been done, that we found, have been done in high income countries. Then it makes sense, right? So you're already getting an idea of what you want to do. So the literature review process itself helps to guide what we do, help us formulate, which takes us to the next step of formulating our hypothesis. Helps us, because hypothesis could be something like, okay, we have what they call, I'm not going into the two technical tools. We have the null hypothesis and we have the alternate hypothesis. So the null hypothesis, like the word null says, you say, something like, CT scans are not effective, in the diagnosis of brain cancers among maybe African population. That's like a possible formulation of a hypothesis. Then alternate hypothesis goes the other way, or CT scans are responsible for and everything. So then the aims and stuff, okay, first want to understand, this is the first aim. Okay, first aim is that a CT scan, number one, is there even CT scan there at all? Is there CT scan in this? And number two is it effective? So usually you should be able to come up with at least 1, 2, 3. Some people also want to do research. They have 8 questions. I mean, that's not a research. That's become a research series. It's not no longer like one research study. That's, I would call that like a research series. Like your research aims and objective, I mean, ideally in a very conservative way, should ideally be like maybe between maybe 2 to 5. 5 is getting a little bit too much, but usually I always like really tailor it down to like 3, right, at the end of the day. But I'm not saying that like you can have 2, you can have 1 and very strong one, and then you give it your best and all that. Material and methods, like, okay, how are we going to get this done? So I was talking about like CT scans, diagnosis of brain cancer among let's say not just African population, maybe you could just say maybe Nigerians. And then you say, oh, materials and methods is, okay, you do a survey, institutional survey. So who are you going to give the stuff to? Okay, maybe the head of radiology in all these in all the tertiary institutions, like, so the survey tools and all that, are your methods and everything, and you get on with like the observational results. So choose a subject based on idea. It can be based on your experience, based on your reading, originality. So I'll be moving very fast now. Define your objective, because I've really laid that foundation. Keep your objective feasible. The more things, the more difficult it gets. You can get help from people, the experienced researchers and everything. Research is about learning. I mean, one thing I've really gained is this, like, yes, the best way, they said that experience is the best teacher, right? But you can actually learn a lot if you learn from the experiences of other people. And that's like why it's important that you get into forums like this. Why you have a forum like this, why there are different like platforms or fora where people can like discuss these things, where you need to discuss with like experienced researchers, senior colleagues who have been there before. Just really helps you like get this, because like once you have your topic and your objectives and you know what exactly you are looking for, I think this, like, once you can get this done, you have really gotten like much more than halfway there, by this time. And also it's important to like join research groups, like groups that are probably like dedicated towards research. Really helps you, in shaping in ensuring that you have something done. So this literature, so literature review process, which is like, a very beautiful picture that really reflects on this too. So you raise a question, you plan to seek answers, you search, search and all that. You have a reflection, think of new actions, and then you stop and reflect on current actions. So this is basically like a very simple process to just like make you understand. So first you have to start with a question. Don't go and start with searching, right? Because that's like a very good avenue for confusion, right? At least have an idea, at least have something, and then like just go structured till you get, reflect on whatever it's being done, and you can really scale from there. You can really just like move forward from there. That really helps in putting these things together. And so it's a very, though it looks like it's a very simple process, but it's also a very hard one itself. Somebody came and then told me and said like that everything is hard before it is easy, and that is a very good case where that applies is research. It's always hard in the beginning. I wouldn't lie to you. Like, it's very hard, like identifying what we call, all this. Like, even though we say this is a simple process, it's hard, like doing that, and that is why like group work really helps a lot in like the research process. So it's important that you understand that, okay, yeah, it might be hard right now, but if I persist, then it becomes easy. Like the next one becomes easier, the next one becomes easier. Not necessarily because you don't work. You might work times 10 of like the one you did for your first paper or your second paper, but it's the process itself is not as difficult. Because what makes research very difficult is the fact that like a lot of people don't know exactly where to start from and what they want to do. That's like one of the most stressful stuff. So you can check if your idea is original. Like I said, originality does not mean new, right? Original just means that it introduces a new perspective. Somebody has done something in London, you are doing it in Manchester, and then you are adding some other newer things there. Maybe the way you are going to check those things, get articles, do all that, find gap areas and everything. So research is more of an art, that you basically build, with time. And that's very critical. And then you define your objectives. So this is basically just like some of the things I've been talking about. You basically want to know how all these things really go. So one really key, I know we know about, like, now that, you know, we've been able to like settle a lot of that, the research methods. Like if I take a research paper, the most important part of our research paper is actually the method section, and that's why I'm like devoting like an entire slide to the method section. We know how a research paper probably works. We know it starts with an introduction or background. You have probably the objective in the introduction section, maybe at the end of the introduction section. Then you have the methods, and then you have the results. Then you have the discussion, and, you know, plus or minus, you have the conclusion at the end. For the research methodology, it's just basically is the systematic. It's characterizes the systematic part. You know, the subject, you could say that's the objectives and aims, right? But for the methodology is like, how are you doing what you are doing? So for instance, you want to like check the color of the sky, you know, and then somebody says, oh, in my research, you sleep and then you check the color of the sky. Somebody says, oh, in my research, you go out, you know, you look at the sky, you know, that's the way we check the color of the sky. Who are we going to believe the most? We are going to most likely believe the person that goes out of his room or of his, you know, apartment and then looks up at the sky and, you know, and then that's how he knows the color of the sky. Whereas the person that sleeps in the bed and then just like sees the sky in his dream is basically doing research, but is not using the appropriate methodology. I just really simplify that. I mean, that's like too basic for a research, you know. So the methodology could be, okay, you want to like sample the whole adolescents in the United Kingdom, and what you do basically is in your community, maybe your county is just one out of like the hundreds of thousands of counties in, let's assume that the United Kingdom has 100,000 counties and your county is just one out of 100,000. And then you sample all the youth or all the young people in your county, and then you say that you did the you, let us say you're working on maybe sexual health, like HIV infection rates among teenagers in the United Kingdom. That's a very faulty methodology, because United Kingdom has 100,000 counties or 100,000 maybe cities. So the methodology, or the right methodology, is that, okay, out of the 100,000 cities, there are 10 maybe states. I'm just using that for example. Oh, we have the Manchester region, 10 regions. We have the Manchester region, we have the London region, we have something. Okay, because don't forget, you don't have all the resources in the world. Because we don't have all the resources and the money in the world, we want to do for 5. Right? So you say, okay, what we first did was that we did a random sampling process to select 5 out of 10. That's half, right? It makes sense, right? And it's randomly, it's not like you decided to just select, you know, this one. I like London. Let me select London. Oh, I like Manchester. The name even sounds good. Manchester City is now in the UEFA Champions League final. You know, let me select those ones too. Bolton. DJ Okocha played for Bolton some time ago. Let me select Bolton. You know, like that's bias, right? And then somebody just says, oh, I randomly selected that. Okay, now out of those 5 that I randomly selected, I also, you know, use a systematic way of selecting the counties. Okay, out of every maybe 10 counties, I selected 1 county, like number 1. I selected number 11. I selected number 21. You know, using a multi-stage research methodology. You know, and I'm quite sure like other speakers will come and, you know, give you all those like many detailed, you know, stuffs on research methodology, but just to like give us like what it is. And you know, from there you selected, maybe at the end of the day you selected like 100 counties, and then you did the survey. Yes, it's representative of United Kingdom, unlike the person I just did, even though both of them probably used one maybe 10,000 young people. One did 10,000 young people in just one county in the whole 100,000 counties in the United Kingdom. The other did maybe 100 per county in 100 different counties. The other person basically has a better methodology than the one that just did for one. So that's like the way you look at it when it comes to like research methodology. So first, are you asking the question on behalf of the United Kingdom? So now if you said, I want to do this research, you know, on HIV prevalence rates in my county, then it's a different ball game. Now, your aim and objective is to know the HIV prevalence in your county, then the first methodology of just sampling all the young people in the county is probably appropriate if the person has the money to do that. But the person can now say, okay, because I'm just doing this county, this is something. So the topic changes, the focus. So basically, you judge someone's methodology on their aim and then on their objectives, right? So first, I want to know HIV prevalence rates in the United Kingdom, or HIV prevalence rates in maybe Bolton County, for instance. That takes, so the first, you have to focus on your aims and objective. You have to identify which research method suits what I'm trying to do. 3, you have to know the rationale. What's the rationale? I want to ensure that every young person in the United Kingdom, for instance, if you are doing the general one, has like a probability of getting selected. Then you can generalize the United Kingdom. That's the rationale. So what's the rationale behind selecting that research method? And then so consider your objects and think about how you collect data. So someone can say, I'm going to the streets to be collecting data, but if you want to get maybe young people between the ages of 12 and 16, you probably go to their secondary school or their high school or whatever it is called. So, and then you definitely have to look at, okay, for young people, should we get the data online, or should we get it from Facebook? Should we get it from TikTok? Should we get it physically, based on what you want to do? But because what you want to do might be, you just really just look at, okay, these are the different methods I want to do. Which one is the most feasible? You have to look at feasibility. You may not have the manpower to start going to all the schools. You can say, oh yeah, since they love, 99% or let us say 95% of young people in this age bracket are on maybe YouTube Kids. We can use YouTube Kids, since all of them go there, we can get that and get our data, And you have to also consider, wow, I'm dealing with young people, right? It means I have to get parental consent. Oh, how do we get this? Oh, if they have a PTA meeting, or they have a parent student stuff, then maybe that's the day to go. We go there, we get assent, we get their assent, and we get consent from their parents, and then we can get to go about our data collection. So there are many things to look around, based on the data you want to collect. Is it clinical data? Is it field data? All those kind of things. If you're collecting clinical data, you have to think about things like ethical approval and so many other things. Even if you want to get field data, you have to also think about that. So you have to analyze that and be able to get a research methodology that is appropriate and fitting for your research. So research article writing, now you have collected the data, you have analyzed it, you have to find a suitable journal, get copy of instructions to authors. You have to prepare the article as per the instruction, different formatting style, different things, then you have to talk about the authors and affiliation, get an abstract, have a highlight. Many of them talk about novelty statements. Like I said, a novelty does not really mean an entirely new thing, but something that you add to the sum of knowledge. You look at the introduction, then this is how your research article goes: your introduction, materials and methods. In your introduction is what they call the funnel-shaped approach. Starts with the general, you want to talk about maybe mental health in the United Kingdom. You can say, almost 1 billion people have a mental health disorder according to WHO. In Europe, this is even worse, with the prevalence rate of this one, and this is what is applicable in the United Kingdom. And then keep going, United Kingdom. But you have given us that kind of funnel-based approach in the introduction. And at the end of the introduction, then don't forget, you have to talk about the rationale, why you are doing research. At the end of your introduction, you have to tell us what's your aim and objectives before you now move to the method section. And someone like me, when I want to read a research article, I don't really read all those introduction, all those this is this one. I just go, what's this person's aim? I'm just saying I want to review an article in 2 minutes. I just go, what's this person's aims and objective? What's this person's methodology? Oh, can I trust the results? And in my mind, I'm like, yes, I can trust the result. Then I go over to read the results section and the discussion section, and then I see the conclusion and then read all that things. So this basically the steps, that just really will help to guide you on this, So just looking at my time now, so I'm going to wrapping up. So looking at this, so generally a research report, would include this and everything. So you have to state all these things. Some would ask for a resume from you. Some would ask, some you have to talk about, the description of the methods, data analysis, presentation of the results, and many other things. So that's the way the research process goes. So research studies basically can be divided into what we call the exploratory, and then descriptive research. So basically, the thing here is like based on your research objective. You might just want to really describe, the characteristics of an individual, situation, or a group. You want to say, okay, what are the characteristics, or what's the blood, hypertension stuff like among the Nigerians in the United Kingdom, and then you just like basically describe that, and then for some, you're just basically like understanding like a new phenomena or a new phenomenon, to just gain like new insights on what you want to do. So we have like diagnostic research. You have the hypothesis testing research, meaning that you want to understand like, okay, is there a causal relationship between these variables? Or this thing predicts this? Or people that are short, people that maybe are black have more likelihood of getting, like, let's say, have more chances of like having hypertension. You want to really know when you take, different people, and then you just really understand that from research studies. So from research studies, before I go to the last, we have like different types of like papers, just for you to know. So we have a commentary paper. So research is not like every time you have to get original data. You have original so when you talk about like research papers, you have like commentaries, which is like, you write a review on, or you make a commentary, just more like a beautiful scientific like writing on an important area. But usually if you want to have a commentary, you should be like an expert in that field. It makes sense to promote that. You have like what we call, you can do research using primary data. You go to the field, collect the data and everything, but that's very stressful. That I can count the number of papers I did with primary data. But there's another one, which is secondary data. There's a lot of secondary data out there, a lot of data from the NHS just locking, around in the UK, but nobody's really using, or nobody's really like having research on that. So you can actually do secondary data analysis, meaning that the data has already been collected, and when you look at the data, and then you actually really formulate some questions from the data, and then you actually really analyze, and then you can write a paper from that, which is a very critical thing and a very beautiful and stuff to do. Then you can have things like, so based on like, you can look at like research based on like several look at it based on how you collect data. Like I said, primary data, you have secondary data, and then you can have research reports, research commentaries, and so many other things. So I think thank you so much. So research is an art, so I would really admonish us to make it your craft. A craft means that you engage with it over and over again and see it more as a skill, which I believe it is, much more than like something that you learn, from a theoretical perspective. You learn more about research by engaging in research and by doing research and by writing research than by reading about it, or, just reading research. Like reading research, yes, you learn more about it, but you learn more when you actually do it. So thank you so much, and thanks for having me. And I would look forward to our questions, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Isaac. I really, really enjoyed that. I loved your relatable approach. Your analogies were things I knew, and really science. You say, I mean, my top lessons are research is fun, because when you think about the whole process that goes into publishing a paper, it's a stressful process. I'll just go online and then just put a topic there, and there's so much that comes up, and then you're already tired from just the first page. So thank you so much for your approach. The 5 here: search, subject, systematic, scientific, and then the sum of knowledge. And also that we are research beings, which is true. Every day we check up one gist, one trending topic, and then you keep digging and you keep digging until you get to the end of the gist on Twitter. So really, we are research beings. And I also like the disclaimer that you gave, that everything is hard first until it becomes easy. So in case anyone is feeling super excited and then you just get started tonight and you're like, oh, this is too hard, I'm just going to close my laptop. You already gave us a disclaimer. It's hard first, and then it becomes easy, it becomes your craft. Thank you so much. So now it's time for our questions. You can put them in the chat box. I want to check for the questions. I don't know if you can see our questions. Are you able to?
Okay, so I think somebody here puts, can you please tell us about the criteria of the research? I don't know in what context. Let me just see. Okay.
Fatima Mahmoud, thank you for your question. Could you be please more specific? Today's event is just an overview of research generally, not radiology research. Our subsequent events will be more streamlined to radiology. So we have a professor coming from, she's actually an editor for a radiology journal. So that will be very radiology specific. But today is just general research. So if you could please add some more, elaborate on your question, please. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so I think I would just like maybe talk generally. I mean, before if we have like more details on that. Yeah, so I think if we look at, sometimes you would say like, okay, what's the criteria or how do we say this is a research? So I think one major thing when it comes to like research, which is just like the things I've talked about earlier, which is there has to be systematic. There has to be like some systematic form to what the person has done or what the person is doing, right? So when you remove systematic away from the process of research, then you have removed almost everything. So you can have a subject and it's not research. You can have a news article, for instance, on maybe on the Daily Times, or you have it on maybe the Tribune, or you have it on maybe the Hill in the United Kingdom, or the Economist. So it becomes a research when you have like a systematic form, and then you can actually really someone else can use that system that has been to do something similar and probably get what we call replicability. So I think those are like the two critical things, as regarding like research, where you can do something using a systematic approach, and then you can actually really get some you can replicate what has been done by someone else can replicate that. And that is why we need like publications, because publications in your methodology section, you basically have to state how you did what you did, what did you what did you do as regarding this, and one thing. So I think I can say another question: what research can I do that can be published fast? Like, that's a very great question. I think that was like one of the questions too that I was asking to when I first jumped into the arena of research, and I would never forget like my first publication and what really happened. So I was like talking to someone, I was like asking this very similar question. Like, I'm always a fast person, and I was like, okay, how do I get published fast? And then we're like devising, okay, so what do we want to do right now? And then I was working then on I did my stuff on the sexuality education and people's and teachers' perception of it. And I remember then that somebody was like, wow, okay, so what do we do as regarding this? And then I remember that we went and then you use what we call secondary data. So secondary data is like the fastest way to get published, meaning that like when we say secondary data, we mean that data that you did not collect. So it could be data from your hospital, it could be data from the UK Ministry of Health or Department of Health, like they probably would call it. It could be anything. So then we analyzed it, and in like 1 week we actually were done with like a research publication. Yes, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't lie to you that we had to actually also stay online to do some extra work, when we because many people just talk about this process like, it's that easy. It's not that easy. Like, you have to like always give up something. We spent like almost all weekend working on that, and then we're not even experts, so it means that we had so many mistakes along the way that we had to correct later on. And overall, we analyzed these things, the data, we're able to like rate the countries, and we sent it to a journal and we got published. But the good thing there was the fact that why it was fast was because, number one, we didn't have to get ethical approval, and number two, we didn't have to like collect data, because the process of data collection itself can be quite stressful and can be very overwhelming sometimes, because even before you even analyze data, you're already sweating, you're already saying, I'm not going to do it again. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. So that was like the principle we used, and then it really worked for us. And then yes, and yes, definitely it's going to take some months before publication, but that was like that's like the fastest, because it has to go through what we call the peer review system, where when you send your work, it has to, some reviewers will actually check it and say, okay, it's just more like a gatekeeping process to just ensure that like the research works that go out are not like bad research. Don't forget too that there are some things we call predatory journals, and I hope that nobody really falls into that. They are the journals that will publish you for money, but they don't take it through peer review, but they are not respected by the academic world. So that is it. So I think I can have another question here. So it's still going to take like some months, but I can say that you can get a research publication as little as like 1 week if you work with secondary data, and then you are fast and committed to the process of like writing, rewriting, all that, and doing a lot of work and doing some late nights on that. So I can see a question here about, okay, how can the person be sure of making a random selection? So there are so many other so there are so many other things in terms of like random selection, and how are random sampling methods practically done. So in terms of random selection, there are so many techniques. So we have what they call the fishbowl technique. And for the fishbowl technique, you basically like, maybe for instance, I talked about the 10 regions, maybe in the United Kingdom, it was hypothetical. So I don't mean that those are like the 10 regions in the United Kingdom. And then you can just like put write their names and put all of that in a bowl, and then you pick 5, right? So that's like a random. So it's randomly that you select those 5. They are computer generated random numbers, and that you can do on Excel. You can learn about that on YouTube. So there are so many other things. So even with in the age of machine learning, AI and all that, and even like computers, it's really easy to like get many of these like random technique done. So as an NHS doctor, that's another question from Godwin Abraham. Which research would you advise me to engage in? So I think it depends on your specialty. Like I said, research makes people experts. So it's more like research makes experts. You want to be invited to talks all over the world. Research can really make you that. I know I've visited like more than 10 countries without me paying anything, just because of my research work. And just because of my research expertise, go for this conference, come for this one, and many other things. And one thing is research also, like, I feel that research also like makes people better leaders, because just the same way you're like researching in science, you're also researching in leadership, which I believe that you can always like just really know. So I would say that like your research topic should be quite aligned, if not completely aligned, in the area of your interest, which means that if for instance you're in radiology, you could like look at radiology, issues or subject matters that you can be passionate about and you can really do. So those are the kind of things. So you can actually really use secondary data. You can get data from your clinic, or from the people that are from your clinic. Like, yes, so I was saying, so you can get data from your clinic, from your hospital, from the group of hospitals. For instance, I don't know whether the NHS has like a data bank, so you can really use that as like an avenue of getting your data. You can also like get data from from like national surveys. You can look at even maybe globally. So you don't necessarily need to confine yourself or restrain yourself like doing like radiology research based on the UK. So even if you do a research in Nigeria as pertaining radiology, or that has to do with digital technology or innovation, because I know radiology is an innovative, like one of the most innovative centric field, innovation centric field in the field of medicine, and that is very critical and crucial for you. So you can even do a research in Nigeria, but it's based on radiology, even though when people say, oh, you have 7, for instance, peer-reviewed paper publications, nobody says, oh, what was the publication about? It's just basically just see that you're getting experience and then you're building your craft. Like I said, it's about building your craft. So it's not about us running all at once. You start from wherever you can start from, and let's progressively move forward, as you just like really build on your craft. So So I would really advise based on like the field that you are based in. But another thing, when you see like excellent work being done in research in another field, doesn't mean you cannot also participate in them. So the most important thing is at least getting some work done right now and getting into the mood of doing research. So somebody asks the question about so my question is, in choosing a research topic, that's Ikwoma, I hope. For instance, can a research topic sound like association between bread and constipation among children based on common clinical presentation? Yes, um, so now the word association between bread and constipation among children is more like, it's more of the question, right? So it's more of what we call like the research question. So it might not necessarily be the topic, right? So you can say things like, this kind of research can come with a research topic like factors associated with constipation among children. Or you can use maybe something like, does high fiber direct, I mean, you can also like ask, you can also formulate a research topic, but it's also in a question format. But usually we don't, it's not a common practice. It's not common practice. And so you don't want like somebody to read a research topic should be catchy, right? Should be engaging. And I remember like one of my most successful papers was maybe one during COVID. And then it was like, I was scared it was a qualitative study, meaning that like you don't have to always do quantitative. Like qualitative means that you just analyze people. It was, I was scared I would die alone, like in quotation marks, like, oh, the psychological and mental health experience of people. So I took a quotation from like the qualitative work and then added it to the topic. So made it sound like really cool, because it's just like you're trying to like get published in the Nigerian Tribune or in Tell newspaper, right? And just by the topic, publishers could accept or reject the publication. So you would want something that would be like, could draw people in. And then, for instance, I already said factors associated with constipation among children, maybe in the UK region. And then you say, one, is this associated with this? Is this like, so you can now say, is there an association between bread and constipation among children? Is there an association between fish and constipation among children? I'm not saying like those could be like your research questions. Is there an association between drinking Zobo and constipation among children? And that is like, then you can really talk about that, and then you research on that and then explain the methods. How did you find what you found? And then basically, so without maybe sounding biased. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes, yes, you can also like come up with like this, is bread associated with constipation among children in your research topic too. But like I said, like it's better that you are basically putting your research question as your research topic, which is like, it's something, but you just ensure that, see the topic as a selling, you are trying to sell your research, because you don't stop selling, you keep selling almost everything and every time. So you are trying to like sell, so you might not want to do that. So okay, somebody said, Godwin O'Brien says, do you provide one-on-one coaching? What is your take on the case report? Okay, like, well, for me, in terms of like one-on-one coaching, well, I don't do much of that right now, right? But I basically also like maybe help people or guide people in their like maybe personal research and things like that, and all that. But I know that like one area where I work with, or I work on, is with the Slum and Rural Health Initiative Research Academy, where we have both the people that really want to come and learn research as a subject and also do research, and then the professional people that we also like try to group together to do like research together with. So the thing I've really discovered about research is that research is basically works or thrives in terms of like a group work, rather than like it being like a solo effort. So usually like for instance, with a one-on-one coaching, I noticed that like once a person's enthusiasm like really drops on like maybe a 2-on-1 coaching, then it basically like it doesn't mean that like, yeah, I mean in the research academy we take people one-on-one and say, okay, yeah, so this is the area we want you to improve on, or this is the area we want you to improve on, and that's like how it goes on that region. And then like, yes, it can be professionally tailored, because we know that, yeah, professionals are busy people, and it's just based on like maybe an interaction with, you know, them on their research projects. But usually we pair people up. Like for instance, a professional says, oh, I want to research about maybe for instance, maybe waterborne diseases, and like, okay, who else in our academy really is also interested in this, even though this professional wants to, because you would always need help, and that's why you will rarely see research articles that are only just published by one person. You will actually really see at least 3, 4, what's even 3, sometimes you even see up to like 50 people on one publication, you know. Sometimes you see like up to 12. You know, I remember like the last paper that we published in Lancet, a systematic review published in the Lancet Global Health. We were like maybe like 15 or something on it, and everybody did sweat on that work, you know. And basically that's like the way research goes. You know, research basically also teaches you a lot about teamwork, about that. But yes, some people really need one-on-one coaching. We have a mentorship platform, meaning that like people are paired, but I mean not everybody gets paired with me, but people that are paired with me, I go on one-on-one with them, ask them questions and many other things. But like it's basically based on like the pairing or the stuff system for that. So I think the last question here by Fatima is that, can I do a research on group? Okay, so I think it's better that, okay, I think it's related to like the earlier question I was asking about. So it's best that you do research with people, you do research with you in a group. Yeah, because number one is that it really gives you staying power. Though the other challenge of doing research with a group, especially when it is free, like the history of like our research academy was that it started for free, and then we discovered that like some people were holding some people back, which definitely, because anything is free, you don't have anything to lose, right? And all that. So basically to sieve out like the, you know, people that were doing these things for free, or just based out of everybody's doing research, let me just do research, you know, and then we introduce like a very small stipend to that. So now the thing is, with a group one, when one person really delays or slows people down, then like almost like, for instance, if the person is handling the research methodology section and you guys don't even really have a, so for instance, if you are using you really have like a very good background on methodology, then the research is almost as good as gone, you know. So that's like the challenge, you know. Yes, people can do research individually. I know that I worked with someone who was really passionate about like one subject, and yes, the person was so enthusiastic that, yes, I know that like I rarely meet them, but sometimes I do meet them. And then like the person wanted to like really, it was like the person who had the staying power to like do individually, but it really occurs, like I said, you know, and then was able to like do it. And I know that like we are almost like done with the whole thing, but it's way much easier to work as a group, to function as a group, because when somebody writes introduction, the other person is writing methodology, the next person is writing results section, the next person is writing the discussion or conclusion section. So that's the way all these things really go, and that really helps a lot. That really is very important, especially in scaling through like many of the research topics, or you know, many of the research hurdles that people might face, you know. And then usually there's this group writing section where everybody really comes together. You know, you can put on your Zoom camera or whatever it is, and then, you know, though you're not talking, but everybody's just really typing. And that period, you know, that at least you are kind of, I don't want to use the word forced to work on the research project. You have meetings, people come present, what have they done, what have you done, you know, and then all that really helps. You know, then somebody says, oh, I discovered this website, oh, this website helps to do this one, oh, I discovered that, you know, I discovered this and all that. And maybe which really helps build, you know, this whole process and everything, you know, of like the research journey. So it's basically a journey, and like they say, you can move fast individually, but you only go far by working with people. So I hope that helped with the question. So I think that's the last question here.
Yes. Thank you very much for taking time to answer all the questions. You've added value to us tonight, and I'm really grateful that you accepted our invitation. Thank you so much, Dr. Olufadewa. And now we've come to the end of the first webinar. In the coming weeks, we'll, like I said, research. When you do research in a group, you'd fly better. So we hope. So if you have not joined the interest group, please try to join today. In the link, there's a link that you should have gotten when you first signed up for this program. And also there's a feedback form. Please try to fill the feedback form after this event so you can get a certificate. And once you join as well, we intend to also have discussions on our WhatsApp group to just see how we can do stuff together as a group. So for instance, someone was asking, what can you do to publish fast? Because I know a number of us are applying in November for radiologists this year. I also know that some people are not applying this year, so they can probably do things that will take a longer time so they can aim to publish before November 2024. But for those applying this year, I'm sure we are looking for things that case report, case series, literature review that you can get done and submitted to a paper by the ending of June or early July. So we need to work together. So please, one way to work together is that you need to join the interest group. It doesn't cost you anything. All you need to do is just sign up on the link. And from there, we can have a chat, look at topics. So I also want to encourage us over this weekend to also look at journals. If you're signed up to the BMA, you'd get the BMJ regularly and look at the topics that are there. This will give you ideas on what to publish. And of course, whatever we're publishing in radiology might not even be something done in the UK, it might be in our African country, whether you're from Gambia or from Nigeria, but that is relevant to imaging and to radiology as a whole. Thank you so much again for joining on a Saturday evening. I really appreciate you guys. And this is it. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.